where they go when they leave you, because we're all gonna have an opportunity to hear about what you have and what's going on. But what happens when the children leave you? Because our children aren't gonna stay that size. And could you just speak very, very briefly about, we wanna make sure that children that leave my school can, or go to, or are prepared for.
Our students end up going to several of the schools that end in 12th grade that are in this room and outside. A lot of the private schools, we also have students that go to boarding schools, and some of them choose to go to the selective magnet or charter schools in Philadelphia. The goal for our students, by the time that they graduate, is that they have a healthy love of learning, they know who they are. Being in a school that ends in 8th grade, I think, is an added bonus, in that I think for schools that end that way, your child gets to know who they are, and you get to know who they are as a middle schooler, and that might change drastically from who they were when they were little if you were looking at a K through 12 school. So we get to know our middle schoolers. We're a very small school, so we might have 14 students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Every teacher knows every child intimately. So when it comes time to choose a high school, we could say, oh, we think these schools might really, really fit who you are. Or you weren't considering this, but you should really go take a look at this school. So they do very well with placement. Over the past, I would say like 5 years or more, every child has pretty much gotten into their first choice school. And we kind of, we don't say, you should go to this school or not, but we want to make sure it's the right fit. We start working with our parents when students are in 6th grade, kind of exploring their options so that they have a full year and a half or 2 years to see what might be a right fit for their child. There's some students that, when they were very little, said, oh, I definitely want to go to this school. And by the time they're at the end of 7th grade, they're a totally different person. So we're able to say to the parents, we know that you've been set on this for a while, but at school, this is what they're really saying, and this is what they're really like, to help guide them through the process. But they go to all the wonderful schools in the area, some that are here, some that aren't here. And I think that goes for a lot of the schools that end before 12th grade.
And we have obviously much younger crowd. We end in kindergarten, and our teachers really get to know the children, because a child could be in a 3 to 6 classroom for 3 and sometimes 4 years. And so the teacher really gets to know the child, and like in a small school, like at St. Peter's, the teacher is able to help parents figure out what kind of child is this, what kind of learner is your child. Is this child going to be fine in a big chaotic environment, or no, this child really needs to be in a really small, focused, stay in Montessori, or go to a smaller classroom, maybe less sitting at desks and more experiential learning, all those different things. So with the teacher's guidance, the parents really get a chance to get a feel for that. And in many cases, as Rafia said, the school you wanted your child to go to end up in for 1st grade, because that school will get them into Harvard or Yale, isn't necessarily the right fit for your child, and it's a good chance it's not the right fit for your family even. So that's something that I always advise our parents, and we start during the 4-year-old year, helping parents look at 1st grades. Visit schools and get a feel for what feels good for your families. Are there other parents there that are going to be people you like and you want to hang out with? Because it's in preschool and elementary school that you meet your friends. I'm still friends with the parents of my child's friends from preschool through elementary. The kids aren't necessarily friends anymore. So it's a really important, some cases they are, but it's really important that you find a school that fits your faith values, or your whatever your moral ethic values are. We have children go to so many different schools. It fascinates me that the families that choose Montessori choose so many different schools for 1st grade. Parochial schools, private religious schools, neighborhood public schools. Some families move to the suburbs. Every school that's in Center City they go to. public, parochial, independent. Really, it's across the board. Last year, we had 31 kindergartners complete our program. They went to 18 different schools. And just because I know it will impress you, one of them went to Sidwell Friends. So we're hoping to get like something from the president. I don't know. They moved to Washington, obviously. Anyway, so that's yeah.
So this is a question that I get all the time at my school, because if you come visit and you walk through our school, it does not look like the school that I went to when I was young, or may not look like the school that you went to when you were young. There are no individual desks. It's all kind of tables for collaboration. It's very open. We are also project-based, so a lot of the learning is through themed learning, and I'll give you some examples. Last year, my son was studying, he was studying ancient China, and they literally went to China. I didn't have to pay for it, but what they did was that every day when they were studying something about ancient China, they built a time machine in their classroom, and they used that time machine to transport them to ancient China, where they met their teachers who were dressed in character, and they experienced ancient China. This year, that classroom is studying ancient Greece, and when they walked in the first day, there was nothing in the classroom, literally nothing in the classroom, because the teachers had decided that they were going to build their classroom just like the ancient Greek civilization was built. And they were going to model like that, building of a civilization in their classroom by deciding where the seats would go, by deciding how things were structured. So when you walk into our school, it's different. So when people come, one of the first things we want to know, so where do they go after this? Like, if they can't exactly match that experience, are they going to be ready to go to a school that's a lot more traditional? And so we spend a lot of time talking about where kids go. And the answer is just like the two schools before me, everywhere. And we spend a lot of time as part of that process, and we are very excited, just like the two schools before me, that kids have an opportunity, because in Corinne's introduction, she talked about how the more she learned about her son, the more she was able to shape her decision about where he goes, and it sometimes changed. And we feel very fortunate that when you have your 3-year-old, you don't have to know what they're going to be like when they're 15 or 16 or 17. You can see where they end up and then shape what that experience, that high school experience looks like, based on all the stuff that you've learned. And because our kids grow in different ways, some of them want to choose a single-sex school when they reach that point. Some of them want to stay in a private school, some of them want to go to a public school, some of them want to go to a boarding school. And so the choices are varied, and just like the two schools before me, they choose many different things in the Philadelphia area. In terms of who they are, our kids, as you can see from the examples that I just showed you, are very much kind of involved in the direction of their learning. So they, from a very young age, are really active participants. And as you all know, with your young kids, all kids love learning. So they're always like, well, why does that work? How does that work? And we work really hard to maintain that really exciting feeling about discovering things. And so when our kids leave, they leave with that kind of excitement and that enthusiasm, and they take that into their high school experience. And so they are very, and they feel like they are partners in the process. So they're the kids that are not afraid to go and talk to their teacher if they need more, to explore deeper a topic, to advocate for themselves in the classroom. They are enthusiastic in their learning. They are, articulate, and they know, and most of all, they know who they are. They've learned how they learn, what they're interested in, and they take that knowledge with them as well.
So to answer the question, where do our graduates after Friends Central, I want to give a couple of examples, and one is that they have an incredibly rich academic experience. But as one of our alums who took over for Sotomayor after she went to Supreme Court, so he's now Second Circuit Court of Appeals, he said, what I got from Friends Central was that Friends Central taught me to learn and to think outside the box, but more importantly, they taught me what the box was and what was inside of it, as well as how to think outside of it. And that has served him his entire life. And another example, I just worked with one of our alums who came back to do a workshop with our second and third graders just 2 weeks ago. Anne Marie Thomas, she's the author of a book, Making Makers, and the founder and director of the Playful Learning Lab at St. Thomas University. She went to MIT, Caltech. She's huge in the maker movement, helped to start the Maker Fair in New York City that just happened this past weekend. And she came back to do this workshop with our second and third graders on squishy circuits, which they developed at St. Thomas University, her and her students. And she was in town to do a talk on her book and to talk about engineering education at a local institution. And so she said, I'd love to come by and do anything with the students. So she came into that. And while she was there, between breaks, she said to me, you know, tomorrow I'm going to give this talk, and I've reached out to the Muslim communities to invite them to this talk for free because I'm so upset about the boy that created the clock and was arrested. And she said, and so for me that was so profound and speaks such volumes about Friends Central, because all of the students that leave Friends Central go on to make a huge impact in the world. They not only have this incredible education, but they are taught that they have a responsibility to do something with it. And when she said that to me, I thought, wow, that's incredible. So here she is to give this talk, and she's going to take the opportunity to reach out to community that has been hurt by this event, and is going to pull people together in a way that counters that event. And so for me, that is where Friends Central kids go on to make an impact.
So children leave us when they're 10, so they're still really little. We only have them for 6 years. As we refer to it, as if you look at our open house on the back, it's the 6 most important years of your life. That's how we refer to it, right? So what do we give them in those 6 years so that we can also assure that they can go off to wherever they go, which, as everyone else has said here, they go to some of the schools sitting at this table, they go to public school, they go to the Jack M. Barrack Hebrew Academy, which is kind of an extension of who we are. What do we have to give them? Well, we have to prepare them with math and reading and writing and all of the things that they need to have in order to move on. We feel very strongly about that. But again, what separates us from every other school being a Jewish day school is that we teach them Jewish morals. So that may not fit in everyone's lifestyle sitting in this room. However, if it does, Jewish text study and Hebrew language study, if you were to look at it, even if you were to look at Christian Bible text study, but the concept of studying religious text is almost like looking at a Google screen. Almost like looking at any screen that our children are so accustomed to looking at. So my 7th grader, when I sit and I look at him swiping and moving and looking at a screen, he is able to absorb Talmud text, Torah text, with rabbinics coming in from the side and an opinion from his best friend sitting on the right of them, and the opposite friend, little girl, sitting on the left of him, and they can sit and discuss what they believe is right. That went on to Barrack, and we've tracked them, and every year we have those numbers. Yes. Do they go to Harvard? Yes. Do they go to Temple? Yes. And some of those children are the ones who turn out to be the best. So it's not only about whether they go to Harvard or they go to Yale or where, not busting on Harvard at all. I know Harvard's awesome. Not busting on it at all. But that confidence to go through life, you need that confidence. And that is what we hope to give them, and we see the results, and we see where our children are going.
Okay, so I'll speak a little bit. So I'm a K-8 public school. We're at 20th and Catherine, and we only have 250 kids in the entire school. So we are definitely, I would say, not your typical public school. I mean, we have 18 children in my 8th grade. Our classes are very small. Now, we are also a redesigned school, which meant that the school district gave public schools opportunities to essentially redesign what they do. And with the Arthur School, we did many, many focus groups with parents, with future parents, with just community members, students, most important, because we wanted to see what they wanted their school to look like. So with all of that, we are now formally partnered with Science Leadership Academy. And so for people who aren't necessarily aware of Science Leadership, that is Magnet High School in Philadelphia, actually nationally renowned, and they're partnered with the Franklin Institute. So what we worked with, we did a lot of informal partnerships, and I will say we are extremely fortunate because we have a very good grant writing team. And we do have amazing, amazing parent and community support. So with all of that, we are able to do many, many things, and I know how lucky we are that we are able to do this. So we began an informal partnership with Science Leadership. So now we are in our first year of essentially taking what they do at Science Leadership Academy at the high school and turning that into a K-8 program. I'm very happy to say that my neighbor, Philadelphia School, we also, and this may surprise everyone, public and independent, we work together. And, you know, because we are both project-based schools, we're neighbors. We have a lot in common, a lot more than what anyone thinks. So, you know, our teachers and administrators have all been working together to create this partnership. In terms of where my students go, 100% of our students got accepted at the school of their choice. Now that looked very different. I have an amazing counselor. She works with each family and each child individually because, you know, some students are really interested. I have one student I'm thinking off the top of my head, a culinary arts program that she found for him. That is something that in 8th grade he really wanted to explore. You know, so it's, you know, we certainly have kids that go to Masterman Central, you know, any of the public schools that you hear of, but we also do really spend time to work with other types of schools because we feel, you know, one of the joys of having such a small school is that we really know the kids. And many of my kids come in kindergarten and leave in 8th grade. So we really know the kids and really know the families. And we want to make sure that where they go after us is a good fit, especially because they're so used to being in such a small setting that we want to make sure that they get to continue, you know, feeling comfortable where they are. And that looks many, you know, like many different things. You know, so we are, you know, we're definitely very happy with that. Now, part of being a redesigned school, you know, a lot of the perception is with public school, test scores, guys. That's not our metric. Our metric is actually what percentage of our children get into the high school of their choice. And we also want to look at, our next metric will be following them through high school. Because a lot of times people think the K-8 ends. Well, what we really feel strongly about is that not only how they do when they're with us, and great, you got into, you know, the high school of your choice. How'd you do when you got there? Because we need to make sure that we're preparing kids for the long haul. You know, we had our back to school night last night. I had extensive conversation where he said we have a very extensive arts program because if your child wants to go to a creative and performing arts school, high school, we want to make sure that we have the ability to expose them to those things. Our STEM program is renowned citywide, and even we have one of 13 civil engineering clubs in the country. So we actually do have kids who come not from our school who come to our STEM program. So obviously Carver, Science Leadership, any of those science-based, inquiry-driven high schools recruit. I mean, you know, we do a lot of partnership because that's just such a niche that schools reach out to us for kids who are in our programs because it really is just so specialized. But, you know, there are a lot of great choices. And I genuinely, I mean, I thought your presentation was just absolutely brilliant. And I say to parents all the time about whether it's our school or where they go next, it's really about fit and where you're comfortable. And, you know, I'm there now. A lot of parents say, oh, Ms. Newman, you know, we love you and you're there. And, you know, I don't know if I'll be there forever. You know, I have one parent who literally asked, she throws scenarios out. I mean, what if the suburbs call? I said, I grew up, I'm not going to the suburbs. I can tell you that that's not going to be tempting for me. I'm like, you know, But, you know, so you really do have to feel the place that's most comfortable, and there are lots of great options out there.